What's going on, guys? Time for another episode of Whiskey Patriots. Today, Carl is on a secret assignment that we can't discuss. We're going to do just the three of us, but this guy offered to bring whiskey and didn't.
But you had some leftovers.
I don't even know who he is. Can you tell everybody who you are?
So my name is Saul Anuzis. I'm the former chairman of the Michigan Republican Party. Also serve on the NRA National Board's Public Affairs Committee, and so been involved in freedom type things over the last couple of years.
I like that. This is the look of sort of older school Republicans, and this would be the look of newer school Republicans. Come on, man. You look like a 60-year-old Republican.
Listen, I just look at it like class.
Oh. And America.
There we go.
So, Carl, we miss you, but we're going to hopefully do a good job until the next episode. So today, you actually made the recommendation for the hot topic of today, which is?
Kid Rock.
What do you
Making
think?
America great again.
I like that.
Look, I think that in the age of Trump, we still have a country that is very frustrated with the political process. I think most people are dissatisfied with both the Republican and the Democratic Party, and they're looking for something different. And I think candidates like Donald Trump, Kid Rock, and others who basically do not represent the status quo, who aren't going to dress like this, who are willing to say what I think is on a lot of people's minds, is going to be very attractive to the American voter. And if you take a look at where Trump won across the country, and if you take a look at where the kind of the feeling is with regards to having a mini revolution, the beauty is today we get to have it at the ballot box instead of the end of a barrel of a gun. And so people are exercising that right. And we're having a lot of new voters come out, a lot of new patriots come out, and they're not necessarily Republican or Democrat, they're just Americans who are sick and tired of what's going on in Washington.
Well, I completely agree. And what I'm going to find so fascinating, if he decides to run, and I hope he does, number one, he's going to win, which is going to be amazing. But number two is I cannot wait for the criticisms from the left about, the music he sings and the lyrics and all that stuff, when they said nothing with Hillary Clinton standing on stage with Jay-Z right. or all these rappers who were pandering, trying to get out minority voters in Philadelphia and things like that. It's going to be a very interesting topic to watch Democrats squirm over a celebrity that they don't approve. Right, exactly. So
they call it hypocrisy in America.
Well, I mean, I'm really going to enjoy any debates that may happen, the way that the media is going to handle this, because they're going to be like, you said that you had sex with strippers, and he's going to be like, I had sex with a lot of strippers. People aren't going to know what to do with that. And so, I've always argued that, let's clarify, I have zero intention of ever running for any office whatsoever, except if Carl and I run together identifying as one person for governor, but that's a whole different story. I've always said that if you're going to run for a position, you lay it all out on the line for it. You take every skeleton in your closet, not just the skeletons that you're comfortable with people knowing about you, but everything. Lay it all out there, get beat up for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they have nothing on you.
Well, I mean, it comes down to being a real person.
Right.
I feel like for so many years, people haven't been able to see what's going on in Washington. There's been this facade, and it's always like, button up and really tight-lipped stuff, but I want to see a real person, someone that's gone through things, someone that's maybe not always been supposedly perfect for their entire life, right? That gives me a little bit of uneasiness voting for somebody that's perfect. I want to see a real person that can have real ideas. And I think that's what's happening, right? People are seeing someone like Trump or like Kid Rock and saying, well, this is a person I can relate to. Not someone just comes in, thinks they're elite, and goes about their ways, doesn't really care about me being a person. And Kid Rock, if you're watching, you should come on the show, and you should announce with the Whiskey Patriots.
I'm going to go ahead, and we haven't discussed this, but especially not with Carl, but I'm going to go ahead and say that the Whiskey Patriots formally endorses Kid Rock, and we're going to go ahead and call this election right now in his favor. JR, one of the things that you've always brought to the table has been a strong understanding of the historical connotations of what the forefathers intended. And when we look at some of the people who are in office right now who have been lifelong senators and lifelong state representatives, that's not what our forefathers want. Kid Rock is what they wanted, kind of.
It's interesting. Back when our forefathers wrote the Constitution, the life expectancy was much shorter. So we have senators now who have served longer than what that life expectancy was for our founding fathers. But I think the problem is we're lacking statesmen, which are elected officials willing to lay it all out on the line. And if it means losing based on what they feel is a principled vote, they're not willing to do that anymore. I mean, I always point to modern day, I would argue Scott Walker in Wisconsin took on the unions. He risked his political career because he did what he felt was right for the state, and it worked out great for Wisconsin. And what's interesting is no one is looking at that model and saying, well, he was principled, he held his ground, and he continues to win. And so there's a lot of politicians that are afraid to do that. They're more interested in their next election.
They're afraid to lose.
Well, right, and I think someone like Kid Rock or Donald Trump, because they're not in it for the sheer career of being a politician, people are going to identify with him.
They have a sweet deal, right? Health care, lifetime benefits, all that. They've got a sweet deal. Why would you want to lose something like that?
And remember, there used to be a guy named Phil Crane who was a congressman out of Illinois, and that's actually when I got involved in politics. I first heard him speak, and he came out and said, I'd rather stand on my principles and lose than lose my principles and win. And we just don't have politicians like that anymore. Right now, winning is everything. And that creates a very difficult scenario. So you back bills and support things based on where's the PAC dollars coming from, where are the fundraising dollars coming from. You take a look at positions and you sit there and you say, well, where's the constituency I need this election cycle coming from so I can pander to their votes? So instead of running for what you believe in, instead of standing on principle, we have a lot of politicians who are basically there for the sake of the career. And that's a problem in American politics.
Well, and I think that's why Trump needs to pass executive legislation right now that mandates that congressmen lose their health care and have to go on the exchange. Watch how quickly that solves that problem. Overnight, it solves that problem because all of a sudden, everyone is going to go, well, all right, this sort of sucks.
Well, unless you're the Dick Blumenthal, who's a 1%er that gets free health care from the taxpayers of the state of Connecticut. Connecticut is the only state, for those that don't know, that health care and benefits are so rich that members of Congress actually forego their congressional benefits for Connecticut state benefits. So
I can't understand why we have a $5 billion deficit in the state of Connecticut that we're facing. Can't wrap my head around that. So speaking of healthcare, listen, you guys know where I stand politically. I'm as conservative as they come, except on this topic, perhaps, which is that the Republicans blocked the Rules Committee basically blocked passage of a bill that would have allowed the VA to prescribe medical marijuana to veterans if it's legal in the state that they live in. So Republicans blocked that, and that's basically dead right now. Feelings? Go.
Oh, awful. I mean, first of all, like I said before, what are they doing then? What's the alternative? Pills? So how many out there have had surgery or back surgeries? What is the epidemic of the pills then to becoming an addict, right? How many people then go from pills to then heroin? I hear it all the time. You hear it with the local police department where people, they get something on pills, or they've gotten a surgery or whatever it is, then they start losing their money, they buy more pills, then it feeds the heroin epidemic.
Well, and that's the dirty secret of it, which is that in DARE class growing up, we were taught that marijuana is a gateway drug. And the reality of it is we're doing this huge campaign right now on the opioid crisis in America. We're working with the district attorney's office because there are, good kids. Kids were star football players and they had an injury and they ended up on Vicodin or all sorts of painkillers.
Which is extremely addictive.
Right. And next thing you know, they're on heroin and they're dying from fentanyl overdoses. So the idea that we're somehow doing a service to veterans by saying, no, you can take Oxycontin, but medical marijuana, no go.
Well, and I think there's even a deeper philosophical problem here. We're supposed to be the Federalist Party. We're supposed to be for states' rights. And if all of a sudden the whole beauty of our system was that states could pass different types of laws based on the citizens within their states, and we'd live by them, and we'd accept that. And the founders actually intended the states to be dominating that process, not the federal government telling states what to do, but the other way around. So here we are in a classic example, and maybe one that's very controversial, but at the same time, it's something that is quintessential Federalist. It is saying states have taken the position, legislature by legislature, initiative by initiative, which means the people are voting there saying medical marijuana from that perspective is okay. And they're accepting it in their states. And for the federal government to step in and say, no, we're going to take a certain class of citizens, our veterans who've served our country, many of them have been obviously tragically injured and are living with all kinds of disabilities where that might be helpful, and it's a choice they get to take. And one is less addictive than the other. Both may be helpful, but one's got, the opioids are unbelievable crisis today. And the cost is very high. And so, it just doesn't make sense from a practical standpoint. And again, I go back to philosophy and say, what are we supposed to stand for? What are conservatives, the Republican Party, libertarians supposed to stand for? And it's not the federal government dictating how everything ought to be done.
But the states' rights have been so washed down over the years that there's so
Absolutely.
much gray area. I mean, you look right now, so the ruling on same-sex marriage said that states have to recognize the laws in other states. But when it comes to carrying your firearm, I can't carry in Massachusetts right now. And that whole process, they're a may issue state, not a shall issue state. So, as a conservative, I'm slightly torn on the complete idea of giving it entirely to the states, because then you have super liberal states like New York that will say, sorry, nobody could have a firearm out here. I don't care where you carry. So I think it's a little bit of gray area that's been watered down over the years, but it's been watered down by the Democratic Party that's playing identity politics of wanting some things.
Well, and look, both political parties do this, but I think the Democrats are much worse in regards to these are the issues that we care about, so therefore they matter more. So like when you talk about this medical marijuana thing, everyone needs to understand Connecticut has medical marijuana. We have dispensaries. A lot of medical marijuana can be dispensed in pills, in a pill form, crush form.
Most people
it's
aren't
not like
smoking it.
Well, that's the thing. It's not like someone smoking on the back porch. And I completely agree. I think the fact that we have an opioid epidemic to the extent that we have, and that lawmakers are unwilling to kind of address this with medical marijuana. And I think it was Chris Christie, and I know he's not very popular right now, but he had a tremendous story in New Jersey about a friend of his that had a surgery, ended up becoming addicted, lost his life to a heroin overdose. And there's also a gentleman they talk about all the time. He was, I think, the number 5 running back in the country. He was recruited. He hurt his knee, and within 2 years of hurting his knee, he's homeless, heroin addict. So from that standpoint, it is mind-boggling to me. But I often laugh too. Like, you take Connecticut. So Dan Malloy has said we're a sanctuary state, right? So we're going to ignore the federal law when it comes to the whole immigration issue. So I've advocated a couple of the cities in Connecticut to be on the forefront of the legalization fight and say we are going to make marijuana legal in our town, and then basically use the example of the illegal immigration. If Dan Malloy is going to, make this, we're going to ignore federal law, then why can't local cities ignore state law the way that he's doing? But this is where we're headed because of the hypocrisy in a lot of policy and politics.
Don't even get me started on that issue, because you know where I stand. I think Malloy should be arrested for advocating and supporting breaking the law. But anyway,
well, and Connecticut has some terrible distinctions when it comes to that. So we've had a murder in Casey Chadwick, who was in Norwich, Connecticut. It was an illegal immigrant that was in prison. We let him out, didn't notify ICE, murdered her within 2 weeks of being released from prison. We have a young single mother who is African American that in this state sent to jail for 10 years, suspended 5 years, actually served 5 years for her charge, which was stealing an education. But there's all these press conferences around we're protecting these illegal immigrant families. But that young African American woman, I don't know if you knew that, Saul, she went to jail for stealing. She lived in Bridgeport, sent her child to Norwalk schools, was homeless for a little while, put her in jail for stealing an education. Chris Murphy didn't have a press conference with her. Dick Blumenthal didn't have a conference. Dan Malloy didn't pardon her. She served 5 years in prison. Who cared? No one cared about her son. And this is those kind of big issues that I think really,
everybody's
really
like, this woman who was going to be deported, she didn't do anything wrong. She didn't break the law. She's here illegally. By definition, you broke the law. So here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm not going to pay my freaking taxes this year, and I'm going to go hole up in my church, and when they come to arrest me, I'm going to be like, guys, I didn't really.
Well, what about my kids?
Wrong.
Well, you're going to separate me from. But look, at the end, the other thing you need to understand about the illegal immigration there is the discussion is it's akin to a zoning infraction or trespassing or things like that, which generally aren't criminal charges.
Don't care. You broke the law.
I
Get
understand
out.
that. Right. I understand that.
Get
I think
out.
the bigger issue is to me, it's ignoring a judge's order. If you were to ignore a judge's order, you're going to go to jail as an American. I think that's kind of where the distinction
that
lies.
too, but also, I mean, I know a lot of people that came to the country the right way and got citizenship, and how long it took them to do, and what the process they had to go through, the paperwork, the exams, the tests, and they wanted to come in. And then I see other people that just completely skip the process.
Right.
And it's like, what about all these hardworking people that came in and came to the country that wanted to be hardworking and provide for their family and did it the right way?
Right, and why did they come here, right? I mean, there's a whole group of people, including my parents, who immigrated here, and they found their piece of the American dream in an auto factory. working on a line, and they raised their kids and lived in this country and did not take welfare and did not look for a freebie and didn't have, didn't get to press 7 to speak Lithuanian like they do today in Spanish or something else, right?
But hang on, let's remember for a second, we didn't vote for illegal immigrants, right? They broke the law, they did their thing, they're doing. People voted these politicians into office who, instead of enforcing the laws that are on the freaking books, think that it's acceptable to support people who are breaking. That is not their job. If you don't like the law, work to change the law. Don't disrespect the law, because when you get on that slippery slope, when you negotiate on your feelings on laws, then the law of the land is shut.
This is where it comes. They start going back and forth, right? They start going, well, it's not my job, it's the government's job. I'm a state, and this is how we work as a state. But then you go, well, then what would you do? Well, we need to have better immigration policy. Okay, so what is that? Is that a wall?
It's a wall.
Is that a wall? And now they're like, well, wait a minute, I didn't say
Look,
that.
the
Well, what
difference
did you say?
The difference between the United States and virtually every country in the world is that we base our entire political process on the rule of law.
Yep.
Right? We know what the rules of the game are. We can fight to change them. We can petition our governments. We can run for office. We have set up a system that, by respecting the rule of law, that I can't take from Peter what belongs to Paul and vice versa, creates a system where we can live in a civil society. And if we don't have the rule of law, if the very first thing you do to come into this country is to break a law, then what will stop you from breaking every other law that you just don't like or come up with a flimsy excuse for?
Exactly.
Bingo.
Well, I love the argument in regards to, well, they don't pay taxes, or they do pay taxes, and it's all these things. And to me, I joked, Bernie Madoff paid taxes, right? It doesn't matter that someone pays taxes. Right. Drug dealers pay taxes.
Right.
I mean, the reality here is, and I completely agree, I think this is about the rule of law and respect and how we have civil discourse. And frankly, you're seeing the left, who now believe that violence is a proper reaction to their feelings being hurt, which is a violation of law. You're seeing, well, we don't want, when there's a riot at Berkeley, we don't want to go and possibly harm these kids, so we're going to let them break the law and arrest no one. It is a very scary road that we're heading down if we don't kind of corral and reinforce the idea of rule of law. And what's even scarier is if you examine the cultures of a lot of these South American countries, there's so much corruption with their government. No one respects the law, right? No. You're paying off cops down there. It's the culture that they come from. And so they're bringing that culture here where we're not going to respect the laws here, and then it's just kind of...
Well, there's always Sharia law, too. If you're not happy, you can always pick something else.
Yeah.
So on that note, we're getting the wrap it up sign from Joe, because I think that we've gone like an hour long with this. Guys, anyone that follows me or the Whiskey Patriots on social media knows that Facebook is not big supporters of conservatives and conservative values. So if you want to help us get this message out there, we ask very simply that you share this video, and we promise to keep bringing the fire. But in the meantime, guys... Sir, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Go Kid
Carl
Rock.
should be back next time. Kid Rock, we support and endorse this message.
Cheers.
And you. God bless America.